Well, hello and welcome to Aim for More, a podcast where we talk about restoring your God-given identity and renewing your God-given purpose through authenticity, insight, and mindfulness. I am your host, Dr. Karen Vanderhoff, and welcome to our new adventure. Well, we are talking about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. In fact, it matters so much to me that I have re-recorded this podcast 3 times to try to get it just right. We're talking about singleness. I spent the majority of my adult life being single, only getting married a little over a year ago at the age of 45. And I want to lovingly challenge the idea that life doesn't begin until you get married. There are 2 things that are true about my story. That Dave, my husband, was absolutely worth the wait. He's the right man at the right time, and that my life before meeting him was absolutely worth living. I want to suggest that single isn't less than being married. It's just different. And I also want to acknowledge that sometimes the church doesn't do a great job of teaching that. We tend to idolize and elevate marriage in ways that are unfair. It's interesting that the world is not doing that. The world, in a lot of ways, is abandoning marriage. We see age of marriage increasing pretty drastically, and we see an increase in cohabitating happening. So there is a devaluing of marriage happening in the secular world. And we see, again, an elevation of it in the church, which is understandable. God created marriage and celebrates marriage, and it should be celebrated. And yet, Jesus himself was single, and Paul, author of much of the New Testament, the greatest missionary we've ever really had, was actually single. The church, again, rightly uplifts and supports marriage and families because, I argue, Satan so often is attacking these institutions. But at the same time, the church doesn't always know what to do with singles. But I want to be clear, singleness is not a punishment. Singleness is not necessarily a plan B, and singleness is not less than being married. It is simply an alternative. So for all of my single friends out there, consider this podcast episode an opportunity to realize that you are invited. You are invited to show up in your church. You're invited to realize that when family ministry is putting on an event, you are part of the church family. I asked my family ministry pastor about that once. There are often events at a church labeled family ministry. And I said to her, "Can I come?" She goes, "Well, of course you can come. Why would you think you couldn't?" And I said, "Well, I don't have a family." She goes, "You sure do. We are your family." And she pointed this out to me, and I think it's really important to realize that when you have a couple with a couple of kids, trying to wrangle those kids at a church potluck or a family ministry event, what a sweet gift for somebody who is single to come up alongside them and say, "May I sit with you? May I sit next to your wiggly toddler and help them with their plate? May I go through the miniature golf course with you? May I bounce in the bounce house with your kids?" One of my favorite images from one of our family ministry events a couple years ago was one of our single guys who is single by choice and retired now, bouncing in the bounce house with the little kids. It was beautiful. And so for those of you who have felt a little bit out of place at church because of your singleness, I'm going to challenge you right now to make yourself known and to consider yourself invited. Even if it doesn't mean or look like it's for singles, you are part of the church body. You are part of the church family. So you get to show up just as you are. Now, there's a lot of reasons that people are single. I've just mentioned a friend of mine who's single by choice. He never had any interest in getting married. I have way too many friends who are widows, and have lost their spouse way too early in life. I have other friends who unfortunately have gone through a divorce and found themselves single when they never thought they would be again. And then there are stories like mine where I was single by default. I was single because I simply had not found somebody that was worth saying yes to. And I heard a whole lot of opinions from people during that season of my life. I um, was often told my standards were too high, and it always frustrated me because it wasn't like I was trying to buy a new car. Other than my decision to follow Jesus, the reality is the person you marry is the most important decision, second only to following Jesus. It is the only relationship that's covenantal, meaning that you take a covenant before God and your friends and family that you will be with that person for richer, for poor, in sickness and health, till death do you part. And so I did not take that lightly. And it frustrated me a lot when people say you're being too picky. Your standards are too high. Because probably because of what I do for a living, I had seen way too many people who unfortunately had chosen really poorly. And I knew that I'd rather have a beautiful single life than a nightmarish married one. Um, I also had to wrestle with this idea of a soulmate, this idea of finding someone who could complete me. The idea of a soulmate is ridiculous. It comes out of Greek mythology, just for you nerds out there who want a little fun fact. It's this idea that um, you are cut in half and the other half of your soul is wandering out there and that you have to find them. And that's just ridiculous. There's no evidence for that in scripture at all. There's no one right person that you're going to miss out on. And so I push back on that idea too. The idea that marriage completes you is a myth. Only God can do that. So here's the situation. Regardless of whether you're single or married, community is what matters in every season. So one of the things I encourage everybody to do, married or single, is to have a mentor and to be a mentor. Get involved in pouring into somebody else who's a little bit younger and a little bit behind where you are in life, because it brings such meaning and purpose. And seek out somebody who's 10, 15 years ahead of you in age and in experience and ask them to pour into you. When it comes to community, get involved in church and get involved in other organizations that you care about, that matter to you. My community has primarily come from church. And like I said, one of the myths I try to push back on is there is a place for everybody at church. There might not be a specific ministry, but there is a place. You can show up. Consider yourself invited. Consider yourself invited to serve. Consider yourself invited to take a class. Consider yourself invited to show up for the soup supper. Consider yourself invited to go on the mission trip. Consider yourself invited to help in the nursery, to help with the youth group. Consider yourself invited. My dad once said that church is not a restaurant where you sit down and are waited on. It is a family kitchen where everybody pitches in. And I love that. It's true. So get involved and create a place for yourself at a church community. And if your church doesn't want you to show up at a family ministry event because you're single, maybe it's time to find a new church. And I've found beautiful community in other organizations. For a short time, I belonged to a gym and I actually found great community there and great friendships there. I had a season of life where I was doing a lot of biking and I would go on these club bike rides and found some wonderful friendships there. There are always organizations in small communities and larger cities too, I'm sure. They're looking for volunteers to help their cause. So get involved. Singleness is not an excuse to opt out of giving back just because you maybe don't have children and can't be part of the PTA. It's important to find ways that are positive and serving to find your both community and to find some purpose and meaning. And then friends, we all need them. Have a mentor, get involved in organizations, and develop deep friendships. Married people need friendships too, by the way. Don't abandon your friends when you get married. I've had that happen to me, and I have a hard time understanding why that happens. Granted, I've only been married for a little over a year, but I need my friends now more than ever because um, it requires a lot of accountability to do marriage well. That's what a wedding ceremony is about, by the way. It's not really about the party. It's really about two people making a covenantal commitment to one another and their friends and family standing beside them saying, we will help them keep this commitment. So I need my friends now more than I ever have. Life stage doesn't dictate friendship. We need each other. And by the way, being married doesn't solve loneliness. Some of the loneliest people I know are actually married. We simply weren't meant to do life in isolation. There's tremendous benefit from sharing the load and being in community. I've been so incredibly blessed to have relationships, and those friendships um, have sustained so many different life phases and stages, including adding kids. And being a quote unquote bonus mom to my friends' children is one of the greatest joys of my life. And so don't let life stage or age differences even disqualify someone from doing life with you, from being your friend. So regardless of whether you're single or married, we need to be in community. It matters in every season. And regardless of being married or being single, we need to serve God. Our life is to be one of service. One of the prayers I prayed that I often blamed for why it took me so long to get married is I asked God to make sure I didn't get married unless I could serve him exponentially more with somebody than single. That was my heart's desire, was that if I could do more for his kingdom single, then why get married? And I just often wondered if maybe I shouldn't have prayed that prayer. But the reality is, single or married, your life is not meant to revolve around you. And that is learned through community. So these two are connected to one another. Now, I will say serving looks a lot different now that I'm married than when I was single because service now starts in my home. And it used to be primarily in my church and in my community. But I haven't abandoned those places either. Instead, now Dave and I get to serve alongside each other. But my time is primarily meant to be one of service to him first, my church second now. But regardless of what serving looks like for you, what you are specifically called to do, again, our lives are not meant to revolve around us. They're meant to be in service to others. Now, that's all great, that regardless we should be in community, regardless we should be serving God. But what about the fact that I just really, really want to be married? Please hear me when I say I understand from firsthand experience how hard it is to want something that seems so good and want it so badly and not have it. Questions I asked myself all the time in my season of singleness was, why won't God simply grant the desire of my heart? I read so many verses where it said that he would. Why is he not? Why does it feel like God's holding out on me? It can feel like maybe something's wrong with me. Why do others keep getting picked instead of me? Am I too much? Am I not enough? Remember God's actual promises. God does not promise us a spouse. There's nowhere in scripture he promises that. He does promise his presence. He promises he will never leave us. He will never forsake us. And in his graciousness and in his kindness, Jesus walked a path of singleness to show us it's possible to live life abundantly without marriage. I would argue Jesus walked what often feels like the hardest and loneliest path as a way to model, hey, I walked it, so you can too. And I'm going to give you the strength to walk it too. And I've mentioned Paul, the Apostle Paul. He said, hey, only get married if you have to, because it's a distraction. I really do love being married. But Paul's right. It's a distraction. Because, as I already alluded to, my ability to serve my church has shifted. I still get to do a lot there. But my primary place of service is my home. And now I run things by Dave first out of respect because my time is not just mine, it's ours. And so Paul was right. You have a lot more freedom to do what God's calling you to do very quickly when you're single. When you're married, you have to work together. But hear me clearly, the longing to be married is understandable. And if it has not happened for you, or it happened and is now fallen apart because of divorce, or it happened and you've lost your spouse due to a death, it is appropriate to grieve and is necessary to grieve. But those feelings don't change the fact that you have life abundant available to you in your singleness. And the way to do that is to keep working on becoming the person God has called you to be. Not so you are someday good enough to get married, but because that's each of our God-given tasks. We are all called to become more and more like Christ. We are called to work out our faith with fear and trembling. We're called to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. We're called to care for our body because it's the temple of the Holy Spirit. We are called to grow in righteousness. We are called to continue to be sanctified. We are called to follow Jesus more closely each day. We're called to let the Holy Spirit renew us and guide us each day. Those things are true whether we're single or whether we're married. So my sweet, dear single friends, please hang on. Don't postpone joy. Keep living your best life. Stop waiting for life to start because it already has. Don't put your life on hold waiting for a future season. And please be assured you're not too picky. You're not too much. And there's nothing wrong with you. But you do need to keep living life to the fullest. You need to live intentionally. You need to keep becoming the person that you're proud of, a person that's comfortable in their own skin, a person that loves the life they live, a person who you'd want to marry someday. Regardless of relationship status, we all need to become the kind of person we'd want to be in a relationship with. And finding a person to spend your life with probably won't happen on the apps. There, I said it. The apps are such a disaster right now. I could probably spend a whole episode talking about how they've changed and what it's like. And if it works for you, that is phenomenal. I have a lot of dear friends who those apps worked. They didn't work for me. And if you've been on them recently, you've seen how messy it is to be on them. Finding the person that you'd like to spend your life with, I would argue, is likely going to happen by living the life God has called you to live, and then looking up and seeing who's actually running alongside you. So if you have people in your life you love who are single, here's some do's and don'ts. Please don't tell them their standards are too high or that they're being too picky. Please don't say things like, "Oh, are you dating?" as if it's some neon sign over their head that they can turn on or off. Don't offer advice at all, really, especially, "Have you tried the apps?" Believe me, they probably tried them. Don't set them up unless you have their permission. People who are single are not like shoes who just have to find their pair. But do set them up if they're open to it and if you've been prayerful about it. I often had people offer to set me up, and sometimes I was open to it and sometimes I wasn't. So just ask. Sometimes it felt forced and sometimes it felt really, really intentional and prayerful, and it was a good experience. Don't say things like, "The right person will come along when you stop looking," or, "You know what, when you're ready, you'll meet the right person." Those comments might have some truth to them, but it actually implies that something's wrong with them or that there's just some formula that they have to figure out and then it'll all work out. Do include them in your life. I've already alluded to this, but it's worth repeating that we need each other. Married and single people need each other. We bring something unique to each other's lives. So if you're married and you have friends or people in your life who are single, invite them to family game night and invite them to Little League games and let them know when there's a band concert or a piano recital. Maybe even invite them to come on vacation, because your kids will benefit and they'll benefit from your kids. And if they don't want to come, they'll say no. Don't assume that because they're single, they're always out doing fun things. Sometimes pizza and a kids' movie is exactly what they need on a Friday night, because the alternative would have been being home alone. Healthy single people give your kids another picture of what life looks like. A healthy single person in your life allows your kids the freedom to know that it might not be when you get married, but it might be if you get married. And healthy single people can love on your children and pour into your kids' lives in such unique and beautiful ways. If you've got single people in your life, do support them. Affirm ways that you see them growing. Affirm that they'd be great in a marriage. The friends that looked at me and said, "Gosh, you'll be a great wife someday," or who sorrowed with me and said, "I just don't know why you're not married yet," often was like a cold drink in a dry desert. So sit with them in their grief. You don't have to solve, just sorrow with them. Affirm that it's confusing. Affirm that it's frustrating. And do pray for them, even when they can't pray for themselves anymore. If you've heard the story that Jesus tells of the persistent widow, it's often what I was told to do when it came to wanting to be married. I was told, just keep praying, just keep praying. It's a story of a persistent widow who keeps knocking on the judge's door until she gets what she wants. And the implication is if you just keep asking, then you'll get what you want. It's more nuanced than that, actually. God doesn't always work like that. And about 4 years before I met Dave, I had grown really, really weary of praying for a spouse. I had prayed so faithfully for my husband. I had prayer journals and letters that I'd written him, and really truly believed that he was coming. And it was just taking so long. And I was growing so, so tired. And I just couldn't be that persistent widow anymore. Instead, what I felt like was a story of Moses being asked to hold his arms up during a battle that the Israelites were fighting. When he had his arms up, the Israelites were winning. When he got tired and his arms dropped, the Israelites would lose. And so he asked Aaron, his brother, and some other leaders in the community to hold his arms up for him. And so I went to my friends and I said, I just can't keep praying for a spouse anymore. My arms are too heavy. I'm too tired. And more than that, even continuing to look towards something I didn't have yet was causing me to be really discontent in the life that I actually had. And so I said to my friends, I'm inviting you to keep praying and interceding for me on my behalf. But I just want to be honest about the fact that I'm not going to be praying for a spouse in this season. I'm going to focus all of my attention on living life abundantly, the life I have. That's going to be my focus, not the life I want someday. And my friends took up that mantle. My friends really graciously and really willingly began to intercede on my behalf, which meant that 4 years later, when I did meet the man who would become my husband, none of them were surprised. And all of them were excited to celebrate and answer prayer, and celebrate we did. And they weren't all that surprised with how fast it went because they had been praying faithfully. And it did go fast. For those of you who are still praying that someday a spouse might come, can I challenge you to put your eyes on the season you're in as well? That this is a season of yeses. This is a season to experience life. Don't postpone doing things that you dream of because you happen to be single. Don't wait to live life. Build a meaningful one right now. One of the things that was always hard for me when I was single was vacation, which is why I do challenge my friends out there who are married to consider inviting someone who's single on a vacation with you. I promise I'll add to it, not take away. But there was a season where it was really hard for me to find a way to vacation. And my pastor challenged me to go on one anyway. He said to me, "What is something that you love to do no matter what?" And I said, "Well, I'd love to go to ball games." Those who know me know I love Major League Baseball. I'm a Cubs fan, which can be really challenging season after season, but I love baseball. It's a beautiful game. And he said, "Then Karen, go watch ball games." And that started, I'd already seen a ton of stadiums, but that began a quest to visit all of the major league ballparks in person. And so that summer, with his challenge, he said, "I want you to go to some parks you haven't been to and send me a picture of everyone you go to." So that summer, I flew from Des Moines to Denver and saw a Rockies game. I flew the next day from Denver to Phoenix and saw an Arizona Diamondbacks game. I flew from Phoenix to Atlanta and saw a Braves game and flew back home. And it was, to date, one of the most memorable trips that I've ever gone on. And I went on my own. Don't wait to live life. Your single season is a beautiful season of freedom. You get to do things without asking anybody else. And yeah, that can feel really scary and really overwhelming. But now's the time for all kinds of yeses. Should I buy a house? Yes, if you're financially ready to. Should I build my career? Yes. Should I start a new hobby? Yes. Should I go on a mission trip? Absolutely yes. What a great way to travel with people. Should I volunteer? Yes. Don't wait for a spouse. In my season of singleness, at some point, I had to ask myself, what if this is my life? What if a husband never comes along? And with that question, there was a lot of wrestling, and there's a lot of grief, and there's a lot of sadness in that question. But it also led to taking action. It led to a new attitude. It led to a new boldness that said, I belong in the places that I want to show up in. And here's the other weird thing about just being human is we almost always want what we don't have. We always think the grass is greener on the other side. My married friends were always jealous of my singleness. Not always, at times. And I was always jealous of their families. And again, one is not better than the other. They're just different. Both are equally blessed. The blessings and responsibilities just look different. I can say that with all kinds of confidence and with all kinds of authority because now I've lived both. And one thing I've learned is God's plan really is always better than our own. During some of my lonelier single days, I really believed I was missing out, but I was wrong. Maybe you felt like that about an aspect of your life too. It wasn't true, at least not in the way that I thought it was. The reality is I wasn't missing out because I was single. I was actually missing out because I was pouting. I don't follow a God who withholds blessings. I follow and believe in a God who is a good father and loves his children really well. And because of God's love for me, my response then is one of service to him. Jesus died for me, and so I get to live for him. And that's true regardless of my marital status. So you hear the theme, right? Don't wait for permission to begin living. Don't wait for a new season of life to start living the one you're in right now. I'll say it again. My single life was absolutely 100% worth living. And Dave was 100% worth waiting for. He was the right guy at the right time. Do I wonder why it took so long? Sure, I do. But I also trust in a good God, knowing that his ways are higher than mine, knowing that I have plans, but God orders my steps. And knowing that allows me to have no regrets. So what would it look like to embrace the season you're in right now, married or single? I understand the heartache of being single. I really do. I understand longing to be married. Believe me, I really do. But what would it look like to start to be content, to embrace this life, this season, and live it fully, to live it with joy? Whatever season you're in, married, single, what would it look like to build a beautiful, meaningful life where you are? Because that's what Jesus promised. He said, I have come to give you life, and life abundant. That doesn't mean easy, by the way, because he also promised that we would have trouble and that we would have suffering. He also then said, hey, I've overcome the world. He assures us that he has a plan and a purpose. He assures us that he's going to give us what we need to work out our faith with fear and trembling. He promised to complete the good work that he started in us. These promises, they're for all of us, married or single. So don't wait for permission to start living them out. Don't wait for a change in your marital status. Again, what would it look like to embrace the season you're in right now? Because regardless of the season you're in, we should all strive to build a meaningful life of service to God as we all aim for more.